Copic friends, Michelle Houghton again. You might have noticed a theme as of late. We're doing a lot of easy breezy, kind of quick, fun, simple cards. So this is another one of those. We've got a little bear and his balloon from My Favorite Things. This is a big set that has lots of stuff going on in it. Great sentiments, a whole slew of them, and then lots of little pieces that you can play around with. I'm keeping it again super simple so that we can do kind of real quick coloring. Little bear, little balloon. I have literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 markers pulled, and that is it. We're going to attempt a red balloon just because I think it's nice to have a challenge every now and again. But I still want it to be semi kind of translucent or transparent that we can see what's going on behind it. That will be the challenge. Then we're going to do a sky with some clouds. And some of you probably have seen this with me before, but if you haven't, there's something for you. And we are going to start with that. And for the most part, we are going to be filling in the sky area. You'll be pleased to hear that I filled my B000, which is what we are working with, before I started. But what I'm going to do is, as I'm working across this image up and around my little bear, because he's floating, isn't that fun? I'm going to create some little cloud shapes. And all I'm doing is I'm leaving some spaces white. It does not need to be kind of real specific. I am going to make a point of having a couple of the clouds go behind the little images. So I'm going to have at least one that comes up behind the little bear. Sorry for the shaking. And at least one that kind of bumps up against the balloon. And when I fill a sky, I tend to use a circular stroke. I feel like for me that fills the area in the most quickly and gets me the closest to that smooth coloring that I'm hoping for. Kind of covering a bigger area faster. You'll also notice I'm using the broad nib, or some of us call that the chisel nib. But if you have to buy one of these guys, they're called a medium broad nib. But my goal is to try to keep areas wet as I work my way around the card. And I really should have started at one end, because now I've got this line up here that's kind of threatening to dry. So I'm going to come back up. The one thing I do have the bonus of is I could make some of these little clouds. So, and you can decide, you go all the way off the edge, you leave a little white edge. I did. One side I left a white edge, the other I didn't, so I think I'm going in now and taking out the white edge. One change you might have noticed is I've been working on a glass mat instead of paper. I'm giving this a try. And I've been doing it for a while now, and there's definitely aspects of this that I really like. There's no question that this keeps my area a little damper. Is that a word? That doesn't even sound like a word. It keeps the moisture kind of in the paper longer. So my ink stays wet longer. And there are some big benefits to that. So I had one little technique where I felt like it did not benefit me the way I wanted it to, but I think that's more because I taught myself how to do this little kind of watercolor effect working on that paper surface. And so when I tried to switch to using the glass surface, it did not work as effectively. And I'll have to kind of look and see what I think about all these little clouds, if I like them all or if I need to eliminate some of them. Now normally I would actually leave an edge. If you're not careful, you can end up with a little bit of that ink kind of pulling into the paper. So, I'm not sure. And this is a big sky, so what I really needed was probably one more kind of over here. But I think that's gonna work. So with this, I'm gonna come right in with my colorless blender. So that was a B000. It actually fades to white pretty easily. So I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna go right around the edges of all of these little clouds. And it's gonna kind of soften them, make them a little bit fuzzy. And you have the option of then adding a little bit of blue violet in on the bottoms, but to me that's kind of up to you. And then you could even go in and add some little wispy spots that get lighter where the wind has kind of spread a little cloud across the sky. But it's one of these that if there is some unevenness to my coloring, it's okay. I might see if I can push, not really going for a cloud, but maybe a little lighter spot over here, kind of push some of that ink through to the back. So what's going to happen is that's going to push that ink through to the back of the paper. This particular paper is a heavier hammer mill, so it's a little bit thicker. It can handle an awful lot of ink. Okay, so that is not going to go white like these other clouds, but it'll end up being a little bit of a light spot, and I can always come back and do that some more. Okay, so to me the little bear is actually the easiest part of this. He got a little damp around the edges, so I'm going to maybe hold there. The balloon I actually kind of want wet while I'm working on it. So let's attack that next. Now, if you decide you want to go even easier, pick a different color group. So I've gone up to about 1/8 of an inch within the black line. And I'm going to start with kind of one of my lighter reds, the mid-tone that I pulled out. I'm not totally sure where I'm going with this yet. So this is an R24, and I'm going to flick this onto and into the center of that balloon. It's going to get a little narrower at the top, I think. And then I'm going to grab my R21 . Now, even when I'm doing kind of heavy blending, this is a hard jump. So if I need to, because I do want this to be nice and soft, if I need to, I'm going to grab an in-between color. But because I've added that colorless blender underneath, I should have a little bit easier time of this. And right at the end, I'm barely going over that highlight, and it is still wet. I can see it when I hit it. So barely hit that. I'm actually gonna take some of that moisture off. I can feel it. And then I'm gonna grab my colorless blender right away. It's gonna soften and brighten up that highlight one more time. I need a piece of scratch paper. When your ink is super wet like that, sometimes you will get a little bit of a pickup effect with that colorless blender, so you might need to have some scratch paper just to wipe that off. So I am pretty excited about that little balloon. I left it really light. Now I could add some blue in behind that, but for right now, I'm really liking the way it looks, so I hate to go there. I think I'm just gonna leave it just like that. So I used an R24. I based it in colorless blender, R24 onto that colorless blender, and then blended with R21 and barely went over that highlight with the R21, and then came back with the colorless blender. So let's let that sit for a second. It's going to take a minute to dry. You can tell from the back that was a lot of moisture. It's still cool to the touch and damp. And let's go ahead and get this little bear. I'm going to do a series of E2s. We've got an E21. And again, he's so small and simple. We don't need anything fancy here. And I'm not going to try to give him a furry texture. I think I'd give myself a headache trying to get into those little tiny details. He has a little hint of texture on his tummy, so I am going to leave it at that. And I'm going to use an E23, and really as much as anything, I'm going to give him some shape. So he's got kind of a ball for a head, big sphere, and more light coming from above. So we'll bring that highlight up to kind of this top corner a little bit. This bottom ear is going to get darker, and this top one will stay light at that top edge. And again, kind of this bottom half of his body will be a little darker, but he's curved, he's a cylinder, or at least it looks like that's what the artist is doing. So I'll have a little bit of that dark coming in from that second side as well. And then I'm going to use an E25, very small amount on this bottom edge. And behind the nose, the underside, little tiny touch on his actual nose. I don't know that I need to smooth out the E25. Could do maybe a small touch down here, but I think the bigger jump is going to be to that E21. So let's see if we can hit the edge of the E23. Here we go. And that is it. I think I'm tempted, just because of where my clouds ended up, to kind of trim this down one more time, and especially where that sentiment ended up. It's off center, and I think I'd intended it. I wanted it off center, but now I feel like I need to bring this in a little bit closer, but that is going to work a little bit better with the clouds, and maybe even bringing this up slightly. But this little guy turned out awfully cute. Again, pretty simple. All in real time. You guys saw the whole process, so keep it easy. Sometimes they do not have to take hours. Enjoy your coloring, everybody. Have a spectacular spring and summer. And please, please, everybody, have a happy, colorful day.